How do I plan my group? Hi, I'm Louise from OTGrow and welcome to our YouTube channel. So if group facilitation or group therapy is a calling for you, then you've come to the right place. Here we discuss tools, tips and techniques to make you an effective group facilitator. So today we're going to discuss a little bit about how do you go about planning a group that's really impactful and effective. The trick of it lies, in first of all, understanding that we're actually designing a group. It's not just planning. And sometimes you might take a group that's already planned or designed in our bumper activity book. But if you have to start from something new, something that isn't available there, we actually talk about designing your group because almost like an interior designer, each group has its own type of feel to it. And so by understanding we're designing a group, we're really matching what it is that we want to achieve, what activity we're going to use with the members that are in our group that day. All right, so you might say, okay, well, that's fine. Let's call it designing. But how do I go about designing a group that's really effective? So there are a couple of tips I'm going to give you for today. And later in the year, we're going to do a more comprehensive warm-up series so that you'll become an excellent designer of groups. And so irrespective of who your group is or population group that you are going to be facilitating for, or what your theme is that has arisen, you will be able to effectively implement that. All right, so some of the core tips is make sure that you have a goal and you start first with your goal. Not, oh, I like this activity. How can I use this activity? We start off with what is it that I want to achieve? One of the tips around that is to make sure that it's very specific. So if you say, you know what, I want to do stress management. Stress management is really big. And if we want to achieve our goal in our one session, because we implement the here and now principle or the here and now technique, then you've got to make sure that by the end of the session, you can say, my clients know how to manage or have been able to manage their stress. And that's a very big ask. So don't make it really big. Make it specific and small that by the end of your group, you can say, my clients have all achieved this goal. And so I was approached by an organization to do a session on change for them. And I decided I'm going to not tweak some of my old favorites and wanted to start kind of fresh. So I had lots of fun designing the group for them. And I thought I would just here and there give you some examples. So the first thing I decided, change is also kind of a big thing. So what element of change did I want? What did I want to focus on in terms of change? Remember how we do things. Big things is also the way we do the small things. How we do the small things is the way we do the big things. So that's another principle we use in the group. So how can we help people to become aware of managing change? That when they are outside in the world and there are big changes and small changes, really some traumatic things happening in life, people having to move, people getting retrenched, how do I deal with those changes without having the wheels fall off? So that was okay. So what do I specifically hone in on in terms of change? And I decided to become aware of how change impacts me. That was the almost the core of what I was trying to achieve in the session. How can I become aware of how change actually impacts me? And what do I tend to do? And then after that, once you've got your goal, which is really very specific, you then go and think, okay, so what activity can I use, bring into the group space that's going to ensure that by the end of the session, my goal has been achieved? And so here, the matching between the activity and the goal becomes almost the fun part. And the creative part to put your mind and almost to think out of the box. How am I going to do that? And so at the end of the day, I decided to do a type of a mandala exercise in which I bring in a lot of concepts of change. I'm going to talk you through it in a minute. And at the end of each kind of phase, I ask people to reflect and to write on sticky notes, how am I feeling? What am I thinking and what is my reaction? What is my behavior? What am I doing? So I might feel very irritated. I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do with this? And I notice that I'm actually starting to blame. I'm starting to try and blame or put down or fight with the situation or the circumstances that I'm in. And so throughout all the changes that was made or that was instructed, the group participants were asked on each stage to reflect. So what am I feeling? What am I thinking? And how does it impact my behavior? And then at the end in our post-activity discussion, then there's some guiding questions like what really came to light for you in this exercise? What does that show you about how you deal with change? And what are some of the principles that you have seen from other people or experienced in this activity yourself that could possibly help you to deal with change better? So what I did is I had a whole lot of different mandalas. I cut them out. I put them upside down so people couldn't see it. It was really just luck of the draw. They chose one of the mandalas and they were allowed to choose one color, only one color, to color in their mandalas. And as they started coloring in, I gave them quite a bit of time to really settle in to the activity, maybe about 4 minutes. And then I said, okay, now you're allowed to pick up a second color. You're allowed to go and choose one other color, and you have to keep to those two colors. And again, chose the second color. And then, how are you feeling? What is your reaction to this? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And how am I behaving? So interestingly enough, some people totally ignored the second color. Is that about opportunities coming into our field and we just don't give it any notice because we're so focused on what we have in front of us? It's just a question to consider. And then we went to the next phase and next phase. And every time I really changed it up quite a bit. I had people, for instance, then give a Koki or a colored pen, what a felt tip pen was you needed to pass one of yours around to the next person in the circle and you had to receive a color given to you. And again, so what do you do with this color? This wasn't what you planned. What about this change that comes into your life at this moment? And then at another stage, we said you have to partner up. And when you partner up, you have to decide one mandala you're not going to use. You have to tear it in half. And the other mandala you now start working on together. And you can plan and discuss with each other how you're going to be able to move forward with the one mandala. And so again, then we had another swap of colors. And then we had one of the final ones was you had to give your mandala on to the next group. Very interesting. Remember, the way we deal with things in the here and now is a reflection of how we deal with things outside. So are we too scared to mess up somebody else's mandala? Are we too scared to give our mandala on in case people really mess it up? And all of these reflections and our behavior, our thinking, our feeling that becomes so obvious in this activity. And then, of course, the post-activity discussion, discussing all the things people became aware of and how that can help them to navigate. One of the principles that we get from mindfulness is to be detached, not to be absolutely attached to an outcome. Another principle we have here is to be in the present moment. The longer it took people to just leave behind what happened and move into the next phase, the more difficult it was for people to really be present with a change and to immediately be focused and give it your all in this part of the activity. So I hope you can give you a good idea of how to go about planning your group, how to go about designing a group. So just quickly, 3 tips we take from today. 1, make your goal very specific. 2, really go and think about an activity that by the end of the activity, your goal is met. So even if it takes you a bit of time to think things through and set up and adapt and bring different elements into your activity. So make sure that by the end of the activity, your goal is achieved, and then make sure in your post-activity discussion, you bring up or reflect things that happened in the activity itself, how people commented, how people sighed, what was happening, what are they seeing, and to become really aware and to work with some of the elements that was brought in their consciousness through this exercise. All right, so I hope that gives you a good place to start, and I trust that following this, you'll become an excellent designer of group protocols. All right, and in the meantime, happy facilitating.